Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Washington 500 Continuum of Care monthly board meeting for the month of February. We'll go ahead and get started here at 2 p.m. Catherine and Kelsey, if one of you would go ahead start by calling the roll, that'd be appreciated. Before I get started, I do want to note we are working on having our captioner here. They were scheduled and are in the process of joining. There is a very unique technical glitch that is taking place that I've never heard of, and I think most of us on the chat have not heard about. Happy to provide greater details, but it just sounds confusing. But the staff is working on that diligently, and we'll get a captioner here and in place as quickly as possible. And so with that, now if one of the wonderful staff wouldn't mind calling the roll for us.
I'd be happy to. Dr. Sam?
Present.
Tamara Bauman?
Here.
Jaja Floyd?
Here.
Bella Irons? Bella Irons? Amaya Lenore?
Here.
Elizabeth Mopin? Elizabeth Mopin? Dorsal Plants?
Here.
Ruby Romero?
Here.
Martha Sasarosi?
Present. Excuse me, present.
Christina Sawicki? Christina Sawicki?
I believe she's in the attendees list.
Perfect, thank you. Oh, and I just got a text from her. Victor Liu?
Present.
Amy Thomas?
Here.
TT White? TT White? Okay.
And Elizabeth has joined us.
Okay, we have 11 board members present, which meets quorum.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. We will just keep plugging along on this beautiful cold day. I believe Tamara has agreed to help ground us this meeting by reading the land acknowledgement.
That's right. The land acknowledgement reads, the King County Continuum of Care Board acknowledges that we work on the unceded traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples, especially the First Peoples of Seattle, the Duwamish people, the original stewards of the land, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. This acknowledgement only becomes meaningful when combined with accountable relationships and informed action, and is the first step in honoring the land that we today sit on and their peoples.
Thank you very much for that very important reminder today. And I believe Amaya is going to ground us with the theory of change.
Our theory of change. If we create a homelessness response system that centers the voices of people with lived experience.
It might just be me.
I can hear you, Amaya.
Okay. I was able to hear.
I can hear also.
Can you hear me?
I can too.
Yes,
yeah.
I can hear you. I'm gonna restart if that's okay. Sorry. Can you hear me, Dorsal?
Dorsal, can you not hear Amaya? Maybe Dorsal can't hear any of us.
Dorsal may need to leave the meeting and come back in.
Go ahead, Amaya.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead and read the land acknowledgement. We'll make sure we handle that. Thank you.
If we create a homelessness response system that centers the voices of people with lived experience of homelessness, then we can focus on responding to needs and eliminating inequities to end homelessness.
Great. Thank you guys so much for doing both the land acknowledgement and the theory of change. The next thing on the agenda is going to be the vote on the December 2024 and the January 2025 meetings minutes, if everyone was able to review those. Okay, Dorsal can hear now, so I'm just going to hand it back over to him because this is his part of the agenda. Thank you.
No worries. Sorry about that. And it looks like one of our potential speakers here in a moment might need promoted here in a second in the Q&A. But yes, we are on to voting for the minutes. Note that a motion would be in order and would include both the December and January minutes if both were something someone here wanted to move to adopt.
Thank you, Dorsal. This is Jaja Floyd. I move to motion that we adopt the January and December minutes.
This is Amy Thomas. I second.
Thank you, Jaja, and Amy with a second. Any discussion? All right, if we could simply do a, last time I tried this, it didn't work very well. Maybe we'll do just a roll call vote because I've glitched too much today already. Catherine, if you could do roll call vote.
Absolutely. Dr. Sam.
Hi, Dr. Sam is present and I accept.
Tamara Bauman.
Approve.
Jaja Floyd.
Approve.
Bella Irons.
Approve.
Amaya Lenore.
Approve.
Elizabeth Mopin.
Approve.
Dorsal Plants.
Approve.
Ruby Romero.
Approve.
Martha Sasarosi.
Approve.
Christina Sawicki. I will wait for that response. Victor Liu.
Approve.
Amy Thomas.
Approve.
TT White. All right, 11 approved. So approved both December and January meeting minutes.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Catherine. I believe we are now moving on to public comment. Was any public comment submitted in writing, Catherine?
No.
If there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak for public comment, please put your hand up or let one of us know in the Q&A. I don't see any. Oh,
Yep.
Kelsey?
Not seeing any hands up, and we'll be monitoring the Q&A throughout the meeting as well.
Wonderful. So we will keep going, but as always, feel free to reach out, smoke signal, email, pigeon, however you can get to the board. That would be great. All right, so we will move on to board updates, board and committee updates. And it looks like, I know from the Q&A, it looks like Marvin is one of the people who will be updating us on the system performance.
Yes, and my co-chair Bella should be also in attendance.
Present.
Is this our space to speak?
Yes, go ahead.
All righty, I'll let Bella start us off. Not let. Bella's going to start us off today. We divided our attention.
Thanks, Marvin. So yeah, we have been looking at the year end of last year and formulating, how we're going into 2025 for our meeting in a couple weeks. And I wanted to start off with some highlights. So under our aspect of committee supported system engagement and growth, We maintained a full committee quorum with 11 meetings. We only had one canceled due to weather. Onboarded 549 new HMIS users and launched 76 new programs, which is a 31% increase. So yay. And we recruited new members and co-chairs like myself for leadership. I will also comment on our advanced data quality and governance. We reviewed and approved the annual work plan and the HMIS lead checklist, analyzed annual federal reports, approved a DV coordinated entry configuration to improve data integration, and established the KCRHA communication and alignment work group. Do you want to read the rest, Marvin?
Sure. Up next is our committee approved key policies and metrics. We approved an inventory configuration for accurate housing resource tracking, hopefully to improve. We approved data quality improvement policy for consistent reporting. We approved the NOFO rating metrics to ensure equitable funding. It was nice to see my NOFO stuff again. The committee strengthened reporting and decision-making, conducted an HMIS user survey for system feedback. While light, we're actually using it and looking to do more of that type. Excuse me. Provided oversight on appeals, including anything helps. The committee expanded the community collaboration and strategic initiatives. That was a mouthful. Supported the well-being blueprint pathway. It's a great, it's a powerful piece of hopefully how we work and move forward. And we published a 12 monthly provider-focused newsletters to share information. Last but not least, the committee is currently focusing on conducting a KSA inventory of members to assess needs. No one's going to ask me what KSA means, right? Because I'm going to ask because
yes, what does it mean?
Thank you. I forgot. Can I get a hand if Daniel's online or Bella?
That may
I'm not sure.
Could it have been LSA?
LS. Thank you.
That's the longitudinal system analysis.
Yes. Okay. Well, we missed a letter there. Thank you. Establishing data literacy training based on committee member skills, setting strategic priorities for 2025, developing a recruitment timeline based on committee members' terms, and updating the annual work plan for the year ahead. With that, I will thank everyone, and we look forward to sharing more in upcoming meetings. Thanks. Anything that add in closing, Bella?
Thanks, Marvin. I appreciate that. I know that's a lot, but we've been working behind the scenes to wrap up the last year and really formulate going into this next year. And it looks like we might have a hand up, so I want to open it up to any comments or questions right now about SPC. Yes.
Was this Amor, was this a public comment or was this for the System Performance Committee? Hello, Amor? Go ahead, Amor. Am I saying that right? Perhaps it was an error. We'll just go ahead and we'll put the link for a public comment to be submitted. And if there is anything else that you need from us, you can go ahead and put the Q&A and we will respond to it in real time. Thank you.
Thanks,
It
Ruth.
appears that they did put it in the Q&A that there's a link that is bad, and I'm seeing it's saying that no one could get in, but we do have 9 attendees along with 17 panelists. So
How can we let them in?
I think we're letting people into this meeting. It would be helpful to know like what that, Kelsey, is it the Teams link that's
We're going to double check with our IT to check on that, as we do have a number of attendees. There is a live and working link, so we will confirm around what the issue is and work on that off behind the scenes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of the challenges with the virtual format is at the end of the day, there's only so much control we have over our equipment versus the individual equipment that an individual might be logging on. If you're somebody who regularly has tech issues and want to participate in a more meaningful way, please reach out to Ruby and I, and we'll help coordinate to make sure that you have that access. Jaja, you have your hand up.
I just read it in the chat that Kim said that was a bad link on the site, but she has since went in and corrected
it. Thank you for that. Were there questions for the system performance? I just want to tip my invisible hat to you all. That was a lot of work in that report. That's a lot of amazing good stuff. Any questions for them?
It was a lot to take in. Is there any way that they could forward a printed summary of that?
Bella,
the answer to that question would be yes, we can. And we would also like to invite folks to join us at the System Performance Committee meeting on the 3rd week of every month. It's where we dig into some of these pieces. Thanks.
And yeah, Jaja.
I was just going to say kudos. You know what I mean? That was a lot of work, and appreciate all the update and the understanding of the acronyms.
Christina is saying that her hand is raised.
Oh, Christina, I apologize we don't see it, but we would love to take your question.
Christina, you should be able to unmute now.
Oh, Christina is a more.
Takes a minute to move my foot over there. So I didn't see the question because I was moving my foot.
It's good to hear your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a question?
We were asking you if you had a question. Sorry.
No, I just received a whole bunch of texts and messages and tried to get in myself. And I sent Ruby the error message I had gotten. I didn't realize we were having computer issues because I was getting messages from people like Mike Mathias and others that had said they were using the online, like the website for KCRHA to get in, and we were being stuck through that piece of being able to get in. So I wanted to make sure we were aware that we had people trying to get in good. That's all I wanted to say.
Yes, thank you.
Mute
I think I can do that for you. Oh, no, I cannot. That'll have to be one of the admin people. The link is corrected. Apologize for that. And we'll definitely follow up to make sure we keep the accurate link on the website. I believe we'll keep moving forward now, and it's actually, Elizabeth, that's a really good point. Can Kelsey, does it look like there are more people joining? Because I think it would be good to kind of just do another call for public comment, since we had people trying to join that weren't here for that piece.
Yep, we are seeing a few more folks joining, so if y'all would like to do that.
So probably technically supposed to do this with some bureaucratic Robert's Rules of thing, but I'm just going to say, if you would like to address the CoC board as a member of the public, please put your hand up. Q&A is also working if you prefer that format, but I'll just give it a minute. Looks like Dwayne Smith has a question or comment.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was just letting you, I didn't mean to press that. I didn't know if you guys see me in here just waiting for a question to be asked. So I was just in here just letting you know I'm here. And when it's time to ask questions, I'll be here. So just letting you know I wasn't trying to ask one right now. I'm sorry about that, you guys. My bad.
No worries. Hello and welcome. One last call for public comment hands. Mike. Oh, you were there and...
There we go.
Okay.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, my name is Mike Mathias. I'm the Executive Director of Anything Helps, and I'm here today because I believe we are facing an urgent moment, one that demands collective action and planning from all of us in helping professions today. We are watching the slow deinstitutionalization of social services unfold in real time. Funding structures feel like they're shifting, key safety nets are at risk, and decisions are being made that will directly impact our ability to serve people in crisis, and we cannot afford to be reactive. As organizations tasked with meeting these needs, we have a responsibility not just to the systems we work within, but to the people who rely on us to come together, strategize, and ensure we can continue delivering services effectively. We must convene as a region, as providers, as frontline staff, and ask, how do we ensure continuity of care when funding models shift? How do we prevent gaps in services that could leave people stranded? How do we align across sectors to push for the resources and policies that we need to sustain our work? We cannot solve this in silos. No one agency, no one policy, no one funding stream is going to be enough. It is time to gather, plan, and prepare for what's ahead, so that when the moment comes, we are ready, aligned, and positioned to fight for what our communities need. And I urge the KCRHA and the CoC to take the lead in convening these discussions. We need an intentional space for providers, advocates, and government partners to plan for these challenges ahead, and we need to do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right. I don't see any more hands, but as always, especially since I know there's still people shifting over, put your hand up, put it in the Q&A, and we will work it into the best of our abilities, either in the meeting right now, or I assure you, someone will follow up. But to Mike, if you're still here, it sounds like one of the CoC board members has a follow-up question that they'd like to ask. And if you want to go ahead and mute.
Sure.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for speaking. That really resonates with me. This is Amy Thomas. I was curious, you're calling for action. I would like to know if you have any suggestions or ideas. It sounds like you definitely are moving in the right direction, and us being proactive instead of reactive. I was just interested as a board member if there are any things that stick out to you, or that we could definitely look at or work on. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. I think there are a ton of things that we could possibly do to plan for a future in which, this becomes a reality. There's strategies like civil disobedience, economic disruption, strategic striking, building parallel structures like, strengthening mutual aid networks in the community defense strategies like back in the 70s. There's people's assemblies, divestment campaigns. I could go on and on. There's all kinds of things that we can start doing to really create an infrastructure that is capable of sustaining the work that we're doing right now without the need to rely so heavily on the current structures that are crumbling. So hopefully that helps.
Absolutely, and thank you very much.
All right. Don't want to cut off discussion, and we are actually right on time. So we were moving a little bit quickly, so we have not lost time. So I believe now I will ask for the coordinated entry group to provide a brief update if there's someone here willing and ready to do that.
I will lean to you, Kelsey.
Sounds good. So the Coordinated Entry Committee has been working on further developing kind of collective vision and plans to work on in 2025. There has been work on access and engagement with coordinated entry, so access to that system that will be a focus in 2025. The usual person who would give updates is out, so these are kind of a summary of kind of what the focus is, and there'll be some more kind of digging into plans and goals at the next Coordinated Entry Committee meeting, which is on February 27th.
Marvin?
Looking for the button. So sorry. Can anyone attend the coordinated entry meetings?
Yep, those are public meetings and the link is online.
Okay, and my one question was the first piece that you spoke to, are we still working towards increasing the regional access points, especially in areas that may not have a direct service provider in their region or sub-region?
Part of the aim around the access and engagement is identifying areas and improving that. I don't want to speak to the full details as that is not what I'm holding personally, and I don't want to speak to anything that I don't know exactly. But that is one of the biggest goals, is ensuring that there is access throughout our full continuum and our full region.
Thanks. I'll show up at the meeting.
All right, I believe we are on to the cross-cutting policy work group. Oh, no, Catherine, you have a question.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a comment that our captioner is not able to connect. We tried multiple things and unfortunately it's just not working. So I just wanted to update everyone on that.
Are we using the Zoom server? It's not ideal, but it's not nothing.
Right.
Can you explain why she's not able to? Because that would be, just so it's clear, she's out of the country.
Yeah, so she's trying to connect from the UK and she has not had any issues whatsoever connecting previously. Unfortunately, today she's having an issue and it's saying that it's not compatible. But so I don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things that has a bunch of toggles behind it, and I think maybe we just had to reboot something, and regardless, we will talk slower, so hopefully the captions from Zoom will be sufficient. I'll go ahead and go into the cross-cutting policy work group update, if that's okay. Kelsey, I've been seeing a little kitty head behind you every so often. It pops up. It's adorable. So thank you for that. The cross-cutting policy work group is moving right along with the work that we're taking a look at the rapid rehousing standards that have been recently submitted for us to review and provide comment on. But it's looking really good. I've had a really fun time looking through it. I love reading policy, so that's just a me thing. But I've also been learning a lot about rapid rehousing standards and what is hopefully going to be more effective for those. So the board will be taking a look at those next meeting to approve, I believe, right? Is in March, right, Kelsey? Yes, okay, perfect. So we will be looking at that this next month and hopefully approving those. The cross-cutting policy work group is also looking at the written standards. As you might be able to tell, that is a long process that is going to be something that we do over time. And if anybody has, desire to kind of look at those with us, the cross-cutting policy work group for CoC members and also board members as well, just reach out and we can get you added to that, to those meetings. But we're mostly just working behind the scenes on getting that stuff done. We're not doing a lot of I don't have a long update for you guys. So that's pretty much where we're at. And we're ramping up to 2 meetings though, a month while we kind of get some of this work done. So hopefully we'll see some more movement on those soon. But thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ruby. It's another great update, and we'll move to our last. Maya, I believe you'll be providing us with a brief update on the app.
I can start us off. Yeah. Cool. So hi, my name is Trayvon. I'm bringing the YAB update, KCRHA staff. I'm really excited to talk about what the YAB has been up to. So first off, the YAB has a retreat that we have rescheduled to the 16th of February, where the YAB members are going to be talking about their 2025 work plan. They also have been working on a update slide where there will be updating KCRHA staff members on, what their goals are and just getting aligned. With that retreat, the Youth Action Board will also be discussing the YHDP reallocation, which they are really excited about, just to, make an informed decision and, really take a good look of the YHDP programs in general. They're really excited about that, to learn more. They're also going to be, they're working on their charter right now and starting like a bare bones, brainstorming on what they think it's important to be in there. So that's something that, they're really starting to work on right now. They also have recruited new members. As of right now, the YAB has a total of 10 board members. So that's really exciting, of course. And then lastly, there's a youth and young adult convening that's going to be happening in July that the Youth Action Board is, just excited to, to bring to the CoC. The theme, I believe we're really focusing on YHDP this year. So that's going to be the theme of the convening. I think that's what the YAB has decided on. We're going to be really focused on, talking about the YHDP programs here in King County, as well as working hard to get other YABs to the convening to also talk about their YHDP programs as well. Maya, I see Ruby's hand. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
I just had a question about, sorry, Maya, I just had a question. What does YHDP stand for? Thank you.
Yeah, Youth Homelessness Demonstration. Go ahead.
Yeah, what Trey said, Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project. So that's funding that comes from HUD, which is Housing and Urban Development, but it's specific to ending youth homelessness or causes that help end youth homelessness. Yeah, and I pretty much would have the same things to say as Trey. We're really focusing on reallocating funding from the Home of Hope, which closed. That was a youth care facility. So we're working on reallocating that funding to something else. And then we are working on our convening and really, you know, trying to pin down where we're going to hold the event. And, you know, just we're going to make it about informing people about the YHDP funding or funded resources that are out there. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you both very much. It's a lot of really good work. 10 members is a good, strong number. In the interest of time, I will keep us moving. Please put questions in the chat or in the Q&A, but we've got some really good news to get from Kelsey, and so I don't want to delay that anymore because I think all of us could use a little bit of a bright spot after the last couple of weeks. So Kelsey.
I need to unmute myself so you can actually hear me. So wanted to share the HUD worked very hard to get the 2024, the fiscal year 24 NOFO awards announced. Are you all seeing a black screen right now?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay, me too. Let's reshare and do this differently. Now it's all just black. Pardon me. As I am doing this, we'll share. So HUD worked to get the fiscal year 2024 HUD awards announced, and they did so on January 17th. And I am going to share what was awarded as I get my slides actually working and not just a blank screen for you to look at. There we go. All right. So I just wanted to share a little overview of the timeline as a refresher. So in July of 2024, HUD released the fiscal year 24 to 25 NOFO. This is the first time that the NOFO for the CoC funds was moved to a biannual process. We submitted our response to HUD October 30th of 2024, and the awards were published on January 17th. Which was a great quick turnaround from HUD. The total award that was funded is just under $67 million. We saw 54 projects that were funded. And this year we saw all projects with support services budgets, which is all 54 of those projects saw a budget line item receive cost of living adjustments. This has not been done in quite a while. So it was a great kind of increase to see on every single project. We have had some projects have the same budget for 15 years or so. So finally kind of seeing a little bit of an increase to support with cost of living adjustment. We also saw all projects with rental assistance budget line items receive a fair market rent increase. So our award last year was our annual demand, renewal demand was 62 million. So we saw with these increases, about a $4 million increase in our overall award. A couple of things of note, in the submission of our priority list, we have Tier 1 and Tier 2. Tier 1 was 90% of our total award. That's our fairly guaranteed funding. This year that was again 90%. Last year that was 93% of our total award. So we saw a decrease in the amount we could put in Tier 1. So Tier 2 saw more projects in this last submission. Tier 2 is our competitive dollars. And Tier 2 is the total we have from that 90% with all Tier 2 renewals, all bonus projects that are submitted, and HUD awards based on how much funds are available. So this year we did see 3 projects not be renewed. We saw 2 transitional housing projects and 1 rapid rehousing project. And then we did not have any bonus projects this year. We are awaiting the debrief from HUD so we can get some further information around the awards. And I am anticipating that coming in the next month or so. I did ask our local HUD field office if they had any inkling of when that might come, and they didn't really have a timeline right now. So once we get that, we'll have a better idea to kind of dig into the collaborative application and the overall kind of scoring of our CoC, but wanted to share the award information that we have at this moment in time. And that's what I have for you. I do see that there are some comments in the chat, and okay. Over to y'all unless there's questions.
While I call for questions, I'll just say that this is really amazing news, Kelsey, and kudos to everyone here who worked on the review, to you, Kelsey, and the other KCRHA staff that made this process happen. And so great job, and thank you for everything that you do. It looks like we did have one question in the chat. Elizabeth asked when we might hear on severe weather shelter.
We'll have to reach out to our procurement team on that. I think it's in process, so I'm not sure where that is in the process at this moment in time, as that is kind of outside of the CoC's funding scope of work.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. And as always, if questions come up for Kelsey on this topic, chat, Q&A will stay open through the meeting. All right, so we will keep moving. Oh, I see a hand. Marvin's got a hand up.
Thanks. Didn't know if anybody saw it. It is great news. And I never want to, I just want a situational. If 3 programs didn't get renewed funding, 1, do they know? 2, is there a plan? Do they have options, or are we going to lose those 2 transitional pieces and 1 rapid rehousing piece in the portfolio of our continuum of care?
That is a good question. These are new announcements, so we are connecting with providers on plans to move forward. So nothing set in stone right now, and more to come.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. So we will keep moving. Unfortunately, Dr. Kelly is not able to be with us today. She is suffering from, in addition to the cold weather, there has been a cold or something going around impacting everyone. But she is very dedicated and committed to our partnership. And so the wonderful Taj has come in her stead, who is equally wonderful. And we are so glad to have her here, and so happy to have her take over for a bit.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taj Wallace. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Manager for the Office of the CEO here at KCRHA. Unfortunately, CEO Kinnison is unable to convene with everyone today, so I'm addressing the CoC board on her behalf. I'm excited to meet with everyone again after a successful CoC convening last week. I want to thank the CoC co-chairs, the CoC members, and KCRHA staff for your hard work with coordinating the convening. While it was not in person, everyone did a great job with facilitating. For this month, I would like to briefly highlight KCRHA's steady improvement on our internal systems and processes to ensure operational excellence. We're happy to announce our Salesforce implementation went live on January 27th. Our finance and programs teams has been prioritizing training and software guidance for KCRHA staff and service providers. The new system will provide us better data with tracking our contracts with service providers, including budget details. We recently have requested all service providers to submit any outstanding 2024 invoices by last week, and we will continue to work with providers on outstanding and current invoicing. I want to take a moment to highlight strengthening the CoC engagement and partnership. CEO Kinnison and I had a great meeting with our CoC board chairs, Ruby Romero and Dorsal Plants last week. It is important now more than ever to strengthen the collaboration between the CoC board and the governing board. Moving forward, CEO Kinnison is advising our new board relations legislative coordinator, Affiong Ibach, to attend meetings with the CoC co-chairs and to familiarize the CoC co-chairs with governing board processes. Additionally, CEO Kinnison and I are meeting with the KCRHA staff in coming weeks to discuss ways the CoC membership can be more involved in the KCRHA's response while including the CoC board in the narrative of change work. We will continue to improve our communications to the CoC board as we continue to collaborate in the future. Last, I would like to highlight the commitment to equity regarding the Trump administration's executive orders. At the heart of our work is a commitment to equity. We're focused on strengthening our equitable approach, both internally at KCRHA and externally in our programs and services. Together, we will continue to make strides toward ensuring that everyone in our community has equitable access to the resources and opportunities they deserve. KCRHA remains anchored in our commitment to evidence-based and equity-centered work, and will continue to advocate for and stand with those most impacted, along with our city and county partners. As for the rescinded federal aid freeze, we currently cannot clarify which specific federal programs or contracts will stay in place after the administrative review, but KCRHA will keep our external partners informed as we gather additional information from our city, county, and state partners to determine potential impacts. Thank you, everyone. And with that, I will pass it back to the chairs to see if we have any questions.
Any questions from the group? Thank you very much. And yes, it's great to really strengthen our partnership now more than ever. All right, I think you're off the hook.
I think I am. It's great seeing everyone in this capacity, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in place of Kelly. Of course, you know, I wish her a quick recovery. And we're just really glad to have a partnership being built. It's feeling out there, you know, and anyway, I'm really excited that we are here today. So I just wanted to kind of bring us back onto the movement of the agenda here, and we're making great time. So thanks everybody for doing that for us today. We are going into the discussion and a vote about the standing up of the CoC Charter Review Workgroup. And so that might sound like we've heard that word combination before, and we have. We were looking at a very specific section of the charter for that last work group, and in that discussion we kind of learned that maybe there was room to be there's room for more improvements on our charter to be more clear and to you know, make sure that we are following our program rule exactly as we can. And so not exactly, but you know what I mean. Anyway, long story short, me and Victor worked on the scope of work. I think Kelsey also helped us with that as well. Worked collaboratively on the scope of work for this revision work group, and Victor has offered to do the liaison position again, and we're excited to have him do that. So if you don't mind, Victor, coming off mute and telling us a little bit about this section, and then we can go into the, I think we already might have done but anyway, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Lu. For this work context, I use he, him, his pronouns. As some of you participated with me with the Charter Work Group revision in the last process, and most recently we also voted on the three very specific sections. So we'll be setting up another charter revision work group soonly, and that will be similar to last cycle. There will be a recruitment and applications process, and essentially the work group, when we resume, the work group will be looking at the entire charter as a whole and determine which revisions they want to work on for recommendation. And my role with the work group is a liaison. So essentially, I'm the neutral party that provides communication. And I always tell people that I will not have any voting rights. I will be the liaison that facilitate the discussion. Yes. So stay tuned for more information regarding the recruitment and application process.
Yes, and I very much encourage our CoC membership out there to apply and really get to the nitty-gritty of this stuff that is their charter too, for all of us to be operating from. And Kelsey, I saw your note here. If you don't mind sharing that really quickly before we do the vote, just in case people haven't seen it. Thank you. Perfect. So this just, the scope of work just tells us a little bit about exactly the part of the program rule that discusses the charter revision, that we are to be doing it in consultation with the collaborative applicant, who is the KCRHA, or the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. And they're also the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS lead. And so we're going to be working on those parts together. It just gives us a brief background on the meaning of our work, and then we discuss the logistics and the time frame. We haven't really come to a decision on that. I think it's going to be determined. And the suggested work group members, as I mentioned, would be our community members. We're going to have 4 CoC board members available, not including Victor, 4 representatives of the CoC membership, the KCRHA staff representing the collaborative applicant, 1 staff member representing the HMIS lead, and then 2 youth action board members. So I think that we have a good plethora of individuals involved in this discussion here. So yeah, and if anybody would like to entertain the motion of approving this and standing up the work group for charter revision, this would be the time to do it.
This is Tamara, so moved.
This is Jaja, I second it.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Jaja. Then I guess that will move us into a roll call vote. Please, Catherine, if you don't mind. Oh, wait, was there any discussion? I didn't ask for that. I'm so sorry. I see one hand. Bella, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I was reading through what you had listed up there, Ruby. My first question is that there's a couple of guidelines that I've brought to both of your guys' attention, and I'm wondering if this committee is going to address those guidelines between the CoC and KCRHA.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bella. I think that there is a unanimous consent or a consensus that this definitely needs to be looked at in collaboration with everyone. So I would say that there's going to be a lot of focus on making sure everyone is on the same page, and just, that we're not asking questions about those kinds of things, maybe, and hopefully we'll be able to answer that in the future.
Is that what this committee is for, though?
Yeah, it's to look at the charter, and our charter is basically the review of our entire work as a board and as a community. So if there's specific parts in the charter that you would like to flag for us to look at, I would encourage that. As also just anybody on the board, please feel free to send information and suggestions to the work group once we stand it up. And also my commitment to this work group would be that I would want everyone to be discussing how we can get to a better and more understanding place. Jaja?
Yes, Ruby, you may have said this, but on the application process, when will the applications be asked? I mean, did you say to be determined?
I said the length of the work group would be to be determined. I believe that once it's stood up, then the application process would be started, or very soon afterwards. I would hope that if we get everyone onboarded in time, we would see us beginning to work by the end of March, possibly. But please don't quote me on that. That is just a suggestion. Dorsal, I see your hand.
There was a Q&A question that I just wanted to clarify because it'd be easier, I think, verbally. So the reason why it can only be a maximum of 5 CoC board members is because Victor is a CoC board member. And so if it was 6 members plus Victor, it would violate the Public Meetings Act. And so I appreciate the balance that's described in the Q&A, but just want to clarify that it's a legal requirement, unfortunately.
I do see a committee member that has their hand up as well. Marvin?
I believe that was the Q&A question submitted.
Oh, my apologies. Great. Is there any further questions about the revision work group? And I'm sorry, Bella, if I didn't quite answer your question there, I tried my best. Okay, not hearing any more questions, I will go ahead and move us into the vote. And if Catherine, I'll have you take it away now. Thank you for that.
Dr. Sam?
Approve.
Camera Bell?
Approve.
Jaja Floyd?
Approve.
Bella Irons?
Approve.
Amaya Lenore?
Approve.
Elizabeth Mopin?
Approve.
Dorsal Plants?
Approve.
Ruby Romero?
Approve.
Martha Sasarosi?
Approve.
Christina Sawicki? Victor Liu?
Approve.
Amy Thomas?
Approve.
TT White? That's 12 yeses. It is approved.
Great. So we did get Christina's response then, yes. I just want to double check.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Well, that is awesome. Thank you guys so much for standing up that work group. I'm going to hand it back over to Dorsal for the next vote that we have going on today.
Thank you, Ruby. I believe here in a moment. Next up, we will be following up on a discussion that we had last month in regards to work and stop me if just full of technical glitches, both computer and in the brain today, that the System Performance Bureau has been working to find a way to ensure that domestic violence survivors are getting the services that they need while being protected, and also that we're getting the data we need to improve system performance and services. And so we'll be taking a vote today on that process. I believe Daniel's going to kind of provide us a little bit of an overview. We also did send out some documents related to some of the questions that came up. I know I got an opportunity to get my questions answered, and I hope other people did too. But Daniel, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I have a message that shows that my microphone is muted, so I'm gonna ignore that unless the co-chairs have other direction there.
If we can hear you, I think you can go ahead. Can everyone hear him on the call? You're good. It looks like you're good. Thank you, Daniel.
Great. Catherine or Alex, are you able to pull up the letter that gives the bullet points for the configuration that we went over in the last
You'll
board
see
meeting?
I put it in SharePoint. Give us a moment, Daniel.
So to kick us off, the coordinated entry DV configuration is a really important step forward from the great work that the coalition has been doing for a long time. This is if approved, would be a milestone in getting the work that's being done currently by the work that they're doing to prioritize, assess, and get interventions to the households that they serve. We'd be configuring that in the HMIS, much like the coordinated entry system is now. And we'd be bringing that information into our HMIS. I know Hannah is on the call and she's much better at going over some of those details. Hannah, do you want to talk a little bit about the importance of this for the group? And thank you for bringing up the letter.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. Right now we're working in a pretty dated system between Dropbox and SharePoint, and the system would allow us to streamline kind of the passing of assessments from advocates and kind of intake providers to those housing resources in the DV network. And it would be, we are protected and need to, try to be as compliant as we can with VAWA data sharing responsibilities. So we would be separate, would be within HMIS, but we would be our own separate entity. But it would allow us to just streamline the process, and my hope is kind of improve upon our current assessment, both the assessment itself and the process of transferring and getting folks housed. And I'm happy to answer any questions that are still around regarding that process or hypothetical process.
And my apologies, forgot to introduce Hannah. Hannah, do you want to give the group just a quick intro there so they know kind of what you're speaking on behalf of and whom you are speaking on behalf of?
Sure. Yeah, sorry. I realize some folks might be newer compared to the other groups I've been a part of. So I'm with the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence. We ourselves are a pretty small organization, but we have several community partner agencies within our network that are all focused on gender-based violence within part of their mission. And my role specifically is Domestic Violence Housing Systems Manager. So I coordinate between those agencies that are working with clients and the agencies with the housing resources that are specific, so confidential locations, those housing resources that are specific to serving survivors of domestic violence. And rather than having each housing resource having their own intake, it's been kind of pooled together within our network. And so it's a much more collaborative effort, and the coalition really makes that flow. And that's really my role, is to connect those dots.
And I just wanted to highlight to everybody that it was really important for us at KCRHA to ensure that we were collaborating with the coalition. And we brought this forward to the System Performance Committee, and we've been working closely with our vendor to ensure that we're going to be able to meet all of the safety and compliance requirements that are beholden to us with this configuration, which will also allow for any future growth or enhancements that we want to do with the CEDV going into the HMIS. With that, I know this was a short scheduled time. If there's any questions, would be happy to answer those.
All right, last call for questions. All right, now a motion would be in order to adopt the proposed configuration for HMIS to include the Coalition to End Gender-Based Violence, or the DV chat program.
This is Tamara, so moved.
Amy
Tamara
Thomas, second.
Thank you. Tamara with a motion and Amy with a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right. Catherine, if we could do a roll call vote. You know what I'm saying.
I gotcha. Dr. Sam.
Approve.
Tamara Bauman.
Approve.
Jaja Floyd.
I believe she had to step away for a moment.
Okay. Bella Irons.
Approve.
Amaya Lenore.
Approve.
Elizabeth Maupin.
Approve.
Dorsal Plants.
Approve.
Ruby Romero.
Approve.
Martha Sasarosi. Christina Sawicki. Approve.
Catherine, Jaja's returned if you want to call for her vote.
Jaja Floyd. Victor Liu.
Approve.
Amy Thomas.
Approve.
TT White. Martha Sasarosi. We have 11 approved. And I did receive Christina's.
I believe that motion carried then. All right. Well, thank you, Hannah, for being here to answer questions and for all the great work that you and Daniel and the rest of both your team, the KCRHA team, and the System Performance Review did. It's a exciting opportunity for survivors, and hopefully they'll receive much better effective services.
I would also just like to take a moment to give a special thanks to Leah at the Coalition, as well as Hannah. Also, Janelle Rothfolk, Assistant Director at the CI team. She really scaffolded this whole work through both technical aspects and just her breadth of knowledge on the subject. And I'd also just like to mention that on behalf of the CI team and KCRHA, thank you to this board for prioritizing this and taking this important step forward. And then it is worth mentioning that up until a few weeks ago, we did have technical assistance through HUD to help us with this project. I just want to share that unfortunately at this moment, we don't have that technical assistance, but we're hoping to get that back as we move forward. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for mentioning the HUD piece in these current environment. I believe we are on to our break now. We have a 5-minute break on the agenda. My clock says it is 3:08. So if we can be back here by 3:12, I can do math. Let's go ahead and say 3:13 just to be safe, but we'll go on break till 3:13. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us.
Okay. As we are coming back from our break, my clock does read 3:13. I just ask that board members come onto camera just to let us know that they are back and ready to move forward. I'm going to really quickly just wanted to, before moving to our next agenda item, Martha was not there during the vote. I wanted to give her a chance to maybe not vote, but just speak to the DV chap if she wanted, but no pressure.
Oh, thanks so much for the opportunity, Ruby. I have no additional comments to make about that agenda item, but appreciate very much the presenters coming to and walking us through that item. Yeah, well, let us get back to the agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, Martha. Yeah, I appreciate it. And thank you to our guests who are here today. I'm sorry that we are slightly behind schedule, but we are very excited for you guys to be here. We have Bridget and Jed here from the Ruckle, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but the Ruckle House Center. And so we're excited to hear about the Pathways to Housing Security presentation. They will introduce themselves, but there's 3 reasons that I wanted us to have this presentation here today. One being some of our board members were actually involved in the creation of this project, so that's great, or this report. The second reason being that I got to see this presentation from a council meeting and it inspired me. So I thought it would hopefully be a great piece to bring to the board and see some inspiration on how to communicate some of these very, serious issues to our communities. And the third reason is just because, well, hey, this is like the coolest presentation ever. And I really wanted to get a chance to get a guest speaker in and learn from another portion of our systems. So I will hand it, without further ado, I will hand it to Bridget and Jed. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. Let me take a second to share my screen and start the PowerPoint, although of course Zoom puts everything I need in the way of the other buttons I need, so give me a second. From beginning, there we go. Okay, so yeah, we're here to present on some work we did called the Pathways to Housing Security. And we're here representing the Ruckles House Center. So to get us started, the Ruckles House Center is a joint collaboration between the Washington State University Provost's Office as well as the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance at the University of Washington. We are an independent convener that is dedicated to supporting governmental, private, and other entities across the state and the Pacific Northwest develop shared approaches to complex policy issues. And so that is kind of where we're often brought in on. We've done work ranging all the way from things like environmental policy to now housing and criminal justice and all sorts of stuff. So a wide breadth of things. My name is Jed Kalupa, and I am one of the senior facilitators with the center, and I'll go ahead and let my colleague introduce herself as well.
Thanks, Jed. My name is Bridget Kelly, and I am a Jefferson County-based contractor, so I'm not an employee of the Ruckles House Center, but I've worked with the center team on this project in particular, and we're excited to be here. We've had some really nice conversations with Ruby leading up to actually being here, so it's great to expand the circle to all of you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and so the report we're here to present today is back in 2021, the Washington State Legislature directed the center to identify principles, options, and recommendations for long-term strategy to create pathways to housing security across the state of Washington. This whole process included 3 different reports due at the end of or in December of every year, leading up to the final report, which was sent to the legislature in December of 2023. And then we have now been doing about a 1.5 years worth of work of reaching out to different communities and entities across the state to provide just information about the report and what we found. Here on the bottom of the page, we do have a link to the project homepage on our website, as well as a link to the final report, which is about an 82 or 83-page report detailing quite a bit of stuff. And we'll kind of try to summarize some of that today. Obviously, it's a pretty quick summary, but just some things to recognize in this presentation is kind of the report scope and the use of it. So this was a statewide long-term whole aspect of the housing security process. So we recognize that as this was an opportunity for us to take a step back from a lot of the acute needs that people are facing, and that is not to diminish the acute needs, but to recognize that all those acute things are being played out in a very large picture that all needs to be working together if we are going to reach some long-term strategies and goals. So we got the opportunity to step back and really try to look at this holistically from across the continuum of housing needs and what people need to feel secure in their housing. Our approach was we facilitated discussions in a multitude of ways that ended up reaching over 400 people to engage with us on this topic. And these individuals ranged everywhere from people who are associated with the state government to people who are experiencing moments of being unhoused, and the whole spectrum in between that as well. So our approach is really recognizing that we are not coming into these projects to be the experts, but to actually highlight the voices of those who have expertise in these ways, and recognizing that that expertise comes in multiple different forms. The best way to use this report is to think of it as a guiding tool to help tailor actions with a comprehensive and adaptable strategy. So something we quickly recognized in this work is that being too prescriptive was not going to benefit the needs of housing security across the state, but rather provide opportunities for people to be guided into some more collaborative work that helps create more alignment as they respond to the specific needs of their community. As a result of this report, we ended up breaking it into 4 major groups or chunks of the report, and those are the foundational themes. And those themes are really what we heard from the individuals that we engaged with, whether it be through interviews, group discussions, and all sorts of things that, as was said, many of the board members here today worked on, and I'm happy to see a repeat of faces and names as well as we present this today. Then out of those foundational themes, we developed 3 conceptual shifts. These were really mindset shifts that allow people to look at housing security in different ways that were highlighted as often getting in the way of current approaches. We also have some guiding principles. We found 11 guiding principles that we will discuss a little bit as well, that really help people make tough decisions and kind of think through it in different ways as they make some tough decisions that we know are inevitable. And then we do have some recommendations. We have 18 recommendations that are categorized into different sections. And these recommendations, again, tried to avoid being too prescriptive, recognizing that there needs to be room for adaptability based on community needs. So with that, I will turn it over to Bridget.
Thanks, Jed. So we tailored our presentation today a little bit in that we're gonna say kind of a big overview of what the report says, but we're going to focus a little less on trying to get to as much as possible of what the report says and spend a little bit more time on like an example of how you might use the report. So our hope is that that sort of gives you a sense of not just what's in it, but how it might be an ongoing tool. And then on your own time, you might want to dig into what's in there. So just to set that context, there's a lot in it and we won't get to all of it. And hopefully we'll leave a good chunk of time for discussion too. So if there's anything really top of mind, we can say more that we didn't have time to present. Yeah, so I'm going to start with one of the foundational themes that Jed mentioned, which is that multiple factors interact to contribute to homelessness and housing instability, and individual factors are embedded within structural ones. So this is something that I know that all of you know deeply and experience directly, and others who work on housing know it well too, but we like to highlight it every time we talk about this report, because even though those who are in deep on these issues know it well, it's really not widely understood enough. So we find it's helpful to just illustrate how we talk about it as part of the groundwork that we laid for the report. Just to say it very briefly, kind of what's on this slide, your ability to access and stay in housing you can afford depends highly on the supply and the cost of housing, which is related to the economic conditions in a community. Those economic conditions affect your individual potential to be earning enough to be able to afford housing in an ongoing way. And then sort of coming around to the other side of the circle again, the availability of services and your ability to access them really affects the extent to which co-occurring health and behavioral health conditions make it challenging to access and afford and stay in housing. And also in the other direction, the extent to which those co-occurring conditions are made worse when you are not in stable housing. And then racism and other systemic disadvantages and societal exclusion interact pretty much with all of the rest of the factors to make it so that some people are more affected than others and to produce the disparities that I think all of you are familiar with and alluded to already today in some of the conversations. So the big takeaway from this is just to say that isolating one factor to try to address it as the root cause, no matter how large that one factor might loom in a particular context, really won't work because the other factors will persist. So that idea is that interventions in different areas depend on each other to succeed and interact. And that's true for any given individual and their specific needs, as well as at the system level and the community level and the statewide level. So the message here is that it really requires a coordinated portfolio of investments and trying to shift away from kind of competing in case making for best solutions. We heard a lot of people experiencing over decades a pendulum swing back and forth between priorities from the state and from other entities who set priorities. So this is really a way of trying to say that the pendulum swing is getting in the way. So that's one that maybe the most foundational of the foundational themes, so worth saying. Next, I'll give just a little bit of an overview of two of those core elements that Jed mentioned, and then we'll walk through an example. So the legislation that set up the project actually specifically asked the center to identify desired principles, which we were pleased to see because it's particularly fitting for something as complex as housing security, where context matters so much and where a wide range of views coexist. So it's worth saying a little bit about just kind of what guiding principles are for, and then I'll put up the ones that emerged from our work. So guiding principles kind of serve as a scaffold. They can guide decision-making in ways that are meant to not prescribe exactly what the action should be or what the tactic should be, but rather how to make decisions in ways that are not time-specific. So they're relevant now, but the hope is that they have lasting value and will still be relevant even as circumstances change. They're also meant to help create alignment across sectors and roles and localities. So whichever part of housing security you and your various roles are responsible for or touch upon, the guiding principles are meant to create not alignment because everybody is doing the exact same thing, but because you're kind of all pointing in the same direction, whether that's in your strategy, your policy, service delivery, program implementation across the board. They're also meant to help contribute to a comprehensive response. So thinking about everything that was in that last slide, not necessarily to make everyone responsible for everything, but to help everyone stay grounded in the whole so that you're able to be mindful of not inadvertently getting in the way of something else that matters, or you're able to highlight to someone else when they might be inadvertently making it harder for you to succeed at what you're doing. And maybe related to that is that they can help navigate what might seem contradictory or adversarial. So when there is something where there is a conflict or a difference of opinion or something that might seem like two things are in opposition to each other, they can be a way to return to the principles and find how to make those trade-offs and give yourself a little bit of a zoom back out and get some guidance on that. And then the last piece is maybe the one that's most related to using the report as a tool, which is that they can enable a periodic assessment, checking in on what an entity is doing or an organization is doing so that you can ask not necessarily just a checkbox, but like how deeply are we aligning with this principle and how could we be aligning more? So it's improving whether it's something you already do a lot or something you're not at all familiar with or comfortable with or recognize that you're not doing to begin with. And that I think also is a part, it's not just periodic assessment, but it's also a form of accountability, not kind of oversight and reporting, but more strategic accountability in a collective way. And also it really helps with adaptation. So, earlier there was some discussion about how significantly things feel like they're shifting right now and how there's a need to be aligned and to adapt in response to that. And the guiding principles can be a way of thinking about that at a little bit more of a shared way as each person or each entity thinks about what their actual actions are going to be. So we're going to put up, there were 11 guiding principles that emerged from the report. We sent these slides and can send them again, and we sent executive summary of the report as well. So I'm not going to read through them all. We're going to pick one and use it as an example, but they're available. And we can come back and talk about more of them if you want in the discussion. But there they are, the guiding principles. I'll say a similarly quick overview. I'm trying to remind myself to speak slowly, which is not my strong suit for the sake of the Zoom, the constrained Zoom captioning situation that we're in. So I apologize when I get ahead of the captioning. The report has recommendations, as Jed mentioned. They're not written because they did need to be applicable to the whole of the state and to all of the different parts of the response and the different sectors that relate to housing. They're not written to say exactly what to do. They're more areas of recommendation. Than the report has a lot of detail about potential actions and suggestions and guidance for how to be thinking them through. There are 18 in the report. Again, we're not going to read all of them. They're in the materials we sent, but just to give you a sense of what the report covers, it pretty much has something for every role and every scale and every sector, even sectors that might not be called homelessness or services or might not be called affordable housing. So it encompasses that holistic whole of housing security frame that Jed said earlier. It starts with recommendations that are really about setting the stage for identifying and acting on those multiple ways of getting to housing security. It has recommendations that we called responding to the continuum of housing needs, which is really the more structural things about the supply of housing and the variety of housing and the options that can be tailored to individual needs. And then closely related is the next group, which is responding holistically to people's needs. This is more centered on the person. So complementing those structural things, this is thinking about the different services and supports that are needed and how they interact both within housing services and across other sectors. So things like eligibility and case management and care navigation and coordinated entry, all of the things that are very near and dear to the work of this audience. And then there are some that zoom out to a little bit more of a systems level, thinking about the capacity of the systems and those who work in the systems to be able to carry out everything else that is needed. And then anything this complex definitely needs recommendations about how to gather information and manage information and then use that information to make, to figure out whether and how things are working and make improvements if needed. There are also some specific considerations for how the state and other actors within the state can better partner with sovereign tribal governments and with urban Indian organizations. So that's a specific area of discussion in the report as well. Okay. So that's like the big sweeping, that was like basically just reading the table of contents to you with a little bit of extra information. And we can come back and say a little bit more about whatever piqued your interest there. But we did want to do kind of a case example of how you might use the report. And we also have some self-guided resources that we've been developing since the report was released that are in that link that was in the chat, and it links through right on our project page. And by self-guided, we just mean there's like prompt questions and some suggested kind of facilitation designs. So ways that you could hear from us how to do this, but also, be able to continue to draw on the report, even if we're not available to you. We're going to walk through just one way of using the report, which is to start from a guiding principle and then use that to spark some ideas about how to use the recommendations as ideas for action. That definitely doesn't have to be the entry point. You could start from a recommendation and then think about whether your ideas align to the guiding principles. You might want to, depending on the context, you might want to start from the foundational themes just to get people on the same page and then start thinking about action. So this isn't meant to be, this example isn't meant to be limiting. It's meant to be illustrating for you. So we're gonna start from this guiding principle A, and a couple of things about what we're about to do. I think you could be thinking about this in a lot of different ways, right? There's the role of the board. There's in how you do your work internally, in how you support the CoC, and how you inform or advise or influence the KCRHA. And then for others who are attending who aren't members of the board, how you participate in the CoC, how you provide the individual programs and services. So even though we don't really have time to do this in a deeply facilitated way, we'd have tried to pose it with questions that you could at least be thinking about, jot down some thoughts. Hopefully it will give you a little bit of inspiration. And then if there's anything in particular we want to pick up on in the discussion, we'd be happy to do that. Okay, and we did, Jed and I talked a lot about like, well, what examples should we pick? And you'll see we picked one guiding principle and one recommendation. We picked things that are very much within your wheelhouse. So this is kind of illustrating how you could potentially go deeper on things you're already doing. But this would work just as well if you started with something that you're, that's not really, should that be our job? We don't really do that now. So something that's a little bit further from your wheelhouse, but we decided to just start with these. So guiding principle A is about the ways in which housing security is viewed and understood, those narratives that deeply affect possibilities for action, and the need to shift away from counterproductive narratives and the need to be trying to proactively advance productive narratives. One example that came up in our discussions was the narrative of individual responsibility and shifting to a narrative of more mutual accountability. Not excluding one or the other, but really trying to have a narrative that talks more about how we're responsible for each other as part of this system and away from those narratives of shame and punishment that have sometimes been attached to homelessness. There were many others, and I'm sure you can think of many that you are familiar with. So there's some questions to think about. And again, you might be thinking about, how you carry out your core functions as a board. What narratives do you currently foster? Just in the way that you treat each other, the way that you operate as a group, kind of the norms that function, your internal policies and practices, how you set up your meetings, how you do those invitations for people to participate in a new activity that you've proposed, how you communicate. A lot of times people focus on communications and messaging as narrative, but that's just one of the many, many options for how narratives get embodied in the work that we do. And then how you track and assess what you do. We heard a little bit about the systems performance committee. So those questions of, what do you decide matters in terms of knowing whether or not what you're doing is having the effect that you want, those also convey narratives. And then there may be other actions that you're thinking about. So starting from the question of what are you currently fostering and what are the effects of those narratives? So are those productive narratives? Are they inadvertently causing harm that you might not realize? And I mentioned this earlier, but when you're thinking about how aligned you are to this principle, it is not a yes/no question. So we had in the worksheet that we shared, we have this kind of continuum that we set up. So this is the next group, Jed, on the slide. So was your alignment, where is it on this spectrum? Is it, not even recognized as important in your organization? Is it recognized as important, but kind of assumed to be somebody else's job? Is it reflected in some of what you do? Is it reflected in most of what you do? Is it central to everything? Is it the driving purpose of what you do? So this is sort of a first step in assessing. And then, the next slide, we'll talk about how you can go from that assessment to ideas for how to move along that continuum. So, wherever you are on that scale from left to right, how can you be moving further to the right? So this is, again, there will be a lot of words on this slide. We're not going to go over all of them. You can go back and look at them later, but we'll just kind of do an example to talk through the process. So thinking about the reflection that you just did on the previous slide, what of the narratives that you're fostering, or maybe ones that you aren't fostering but you wish you were, what is productive for housing security goals, and what more could you do? Maybe also what could you stop doing to more consistently foster those narratives? So next we have just a reminder of sort of those areas of opportunity that were in those previous questions. There's a variety of places that you can potentially affect narratives, and then a little mapping to some of the recommendations in the report that offer ideas that, even if they're not called narrative change, even if they're not about communications, the actions that you take in these areas really do affect how housing is understood and how people view it, and therefore what people are willing to support and what people are willing to do. So there's the recognition that there need to be multiple ways of understanding success. An example here is the question of, what does it mean to reduce homelessness? And for some people, that's like a population rate. So if we reduced it by 50%, that would be a huge success. But for the 50% who are still experiencing homelessness, that success actually means very little. So for them, it's more about like, what is their individual need and how well is that being met by the system, recognized, met, et cetera, by the system. That tension is probably familiar to all of you, right? It's the fact that there are not enough resources to meet all of the needs. So what success, both of those things matter. And, you know, another example is reducing visible homelessness might be a shared goal, but if it's not accompanied by the people who are experiencing homelessness receiving the supports and services that they need, then it's not a real success, just that it's moved or in a different place. That was discussed a lot in our meetings. The second one, there's a recommendation about clarifying kind of everybody who invests in homelessness and housing security, from the federal government, the state government, but also family and friends who take people in and aren't really documented in the system. And that's really just a reminder that like how much money there is and how it's spent is part of the narrative. And then there's some recommendations around aligning policymaking across different sectors. So you're already doing some cross-sectoral policy thinking. So that's an area where you're might think a little bit more deeply about narrative specifically. And then the diversifying implementation is about kind of who does the work, who are the providers, who are the developers, who are the services, and kind of who does the work tells the story. And then the last one is drawing on experiential expertise, which we'll say a little bit more about. That's the one we decided to build out as a little bit of an example. That one is obviously near and dear to your role. Just to quickly say that the guiding principles don't exist in isolation. So any one guiding principle relates to others. So there are some other guiding principles that intersect. And so you tend to be advancing more than one at a time. So on the next slide, this recommendation about experiential expertise, I think the big takeaway in the report is that it is really about integrating diverse and complementary sources of expertise. So it's not a fight for like who knows best or having a hierarchy. It's really about matching, right? So people who are experiencing homeless have deep knowledge about what the needs are and what's working. People who deliver programs can see patterns across people a little bit more. People who work in policy know policy and they have experience with policy that's really valuable. People who do research understand how to tell whether things are working. So it's about a little bit more of a matchmaking. So we have a couple of prompt questions about which perspectives do you currently have to understand what's needed and what's being done and what else is possible, and then what perspectives might be missing and what processes would help you gather and value and integrate those perspectives. And also importantly, what knowledge do you hold that others need? So that's part of your role of, who is your close scope of work, job to influence, and maybe even a little bit beyond that, especially when you think about your role in influencing narratives. And then the last two boxes are, again, kind of a reminder of those different areas of opportunity and some of the potential actions that are reflected in the language in the report around this expertise in terms of identifying the gaps, but then also thinking about what new relationships might be needed, what it looks like to create accessible and robust processes, and thinking about learning as kind of a portfolio of a learning. Again, not a hierarchy of like the perfect metric, but different kinds of learning might need different sources and inputs. That was a very, I know, fast and it's kind of, somewhat surface, but we really just wanted to introduce sort of like the thought process that we're hoping people will be able to use the report through. And this is a reminder, we put the link in the chat as well. And are happy to share it again, but these are those self-guided resources that I was talking about. A couple of them we're still drafting. So we've been building them out as we do these presentations, but I think the ones around the guiding principles and the recommendations are the most interactive and the most kind of really being able to get your hands into the report. Jed, do you have anything to add? I know I rushed through and didn't offer you that after each slide in the way that I intended to, but I was trying to just catch up on the time a little bit. So
No, you're good.
I know I did the opposite of what I said I would do, but
it's all good. I think I'd rather have questions and stuff, so I'm fine with, going to the questions.
Cool. Really quickly before we do that, I just wanted to let everyone know where they can find the materials, because with the Zoom capacity right now, so all the resources that you are talking about today are going to be found on the website and underneath today's meeting tab. So if you're looking for that, it's going to be kcrha.org /resources/continuum-of-care, or go to kcrha.org and go to the About tab, Boards and Committees, Continuum of Care Board. And once you get to there, you'll see the meetings, and that's where the information will be. Now, Bella, I do see that you have a question, and thank you to Bridget and Jen for coming today.
Oh, I see, Bella, about the approach. There's a pretty extensive section in the report about the approach. But is there any particular aspect of it that you'd be interested in us speaking to?
Yeah, I went through the reports that were online, and I read through different formulas and such. And I was asking about the methodology because in your final report that's online, you have 18 recommendations. So I'm more intrigued as to, how they were formulated, all of this data gathering and this interwoven, context. And then how did you get to the 18 recommendations? Because it kind of seems like the recommendations are what we're being pointed towards. But for me, I'm trying to logistically understand, how you arrived at those conclusions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Do you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of it was, our methodology really was starting with interviews and interviewing people in isolation to allow them more opportunities to be candid with us in kind of a confidential space where they felt like they could really speak to things that they are experiencing or dealing with that may not always be shared in public spaces. Taking note of all those things, kind of analyzing what were some common themes, but also what were some tensions or some areas of high conflict that were coming out of those discussions. And then we started slowly bringing people together, both in very open forums that allowed any perspective that wanted to come and have a conversation, but then also narrowing it down to, we had some moments where we recognized there were areas where people actually had shared goals and it would be beneficial for them to talk with one another in given spaces and all that. As we had those conversations, whether it was in individual settings or within group settings, we had note takers capturing those conversations, highlighting key points that were coming out of it. And then we kind of basically did a qualitative analysis of all those notes and that information to pull out things that were pretty common frustrations and ideas, and often some of those recommendations came from people saying this is something we need, and we didn't, as we threw those out to other groups and stuff, there wasn't really a whole lot of resistance to them and those types of things. So it was very iterative, and it all came from the different voices from different levels of expertise based on the 400 plus individuals we engaged with. Bridget, did you want to add to that as well?
I would just add that in addition to that kind of, where there was convergence or where there was a really important lack of convergence that needed a recommendation to help navigate it. There were some areas that we didn't focus on because we knew there were other parallel things happening. So for example, the Affordable Housing Advisory Board was doing a very robust, engaged process around policies related to housing supply and land use and those things. So we didn't want to duplicate that analysis. And there's a poverty reduction working group that was focused, definitely the need for economic security being tied in, but we didn't go into as much detail in those areas. So we reference out. So sometimes it's like we might have heard a lot about something, but we knew that it was pretty much aligning with what was emerging from those processes. And so we didn't develop recommendations in those areas.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Is that qualitative analysis on your website as well?
They're not, no. Okay. Like I said, some of that was for confidentiality reasons and those types of things as well. So.
Okay. Are there any other questions for our guests today?
Sorry, this is Tamara. I just wanted to say I loved every second of this report out, and participating in the process was one of the most meaningful experiences I've ever had in my life. And, I do try to get more involved in policy and outreach and mutual aid and all those things that really help bolster community well-being. I'm very honored and to have participated, and I thank you and I honor your findings. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And we're glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it means a lot to hear that. Thanks.
Yeah. I see Elizabeth has her hand. Go ahead.
Yes, I wondered if you could put information on how to get the findings of those two other groups that you mentioned, the Affordable Housing Work Group and the Poverty Reduction Group.
You know, I don't have the links at the tip of my fingers, so I might be able to get to them before this meeting ends, but if not, I'll follow up and send them to Catherine.
Thank you.
I think who's the main,
That
yeah,
would
so
be
yeah, they're
lovely.
in the report as well, but it's like buried on page, 60 or something.
Understood.
So I'll get them and follow up, if not by the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
And I also want to add, I think very out loud sometimes. I also want to add to Bella's question as well, that what is also in the report is appendices that also outline who we talked to and in what formats we talked to some people as well. So that also gives some more methodology leaning information.
It occurs to me that there's also still at least some information about the facilitated workshops that we held and kind of the topics and the questions. So there's not the data is not accessible publicly for those reasons that Jed said, but some parts of the process are on there.
Can I go ahead and ask the other question?
Sorry, go ahead, Bella. Yes, appreciate it.
So this looks like you've been, you published the final report last summer and you've been out presenting this. Out of the recommendations, where have you seen traction with other organizations? Is there any particular area, because there's subsets of your recommendations. And so is there traction in one community over another of people looking at aligning policies or guidelines or moving these recommendations forward?
Bridget, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can start. I think that the main use of, well, I'm not going to say main, but a major use of the report was that the Department of Commerce really used it to inform their new strategy for their homeless crisis response. So that is probably, the place where across all of it, they really dug through and drew on it. And some of the other communities or talks that we've been giving, I think a big thing that has really resonated for people is the emphasis, I would say two things on precarious housing. So thinking more about preventing homelessness, about finding maybe smaller scale investments that can really help people whose circumstances, who might have housing, but whose circumstances are precarious, not to the exclusion of people experiencing acute homelessness, but in the recognition that that's kind of in the gap between the crisis response homelessness services and the affordable housing movement. That's kind of falling in a gap. So there was a lot of interest in that in terms of how local places might be able to do that. And I think we have been trying to talk a lot about this shift from competition to collaboration, that in many ways our systems are inherently set up to make us all compete against each other, and what are the ways, small and large, that could happen. That's been a harder conversation, but one that has interested people and that has resonated. Those are some top ones that stand out to me. I don't know, Jed, what stands out to you?
Yeah, I would say those things definitely stand out to me as well. I think we've also done some really cool work. We've had some communities ask us to come help them do forums and groups. And so, for instance, Bellingham had us come up and we engaged with them and they helped us get their community who needed to be in the room, and we helped do a facilitation with them that helped them kind of do what we call the guiding principles map or recommendations mapping, to identify like what is being done in their community, where are the gaps, and how can the people in the room work to close those gaps and move forward. So we saw some of that. We've had some other conversations with people. We went to Housing Washington conference and presented and did some a similar thing with the guiding principles, recognizing that the people at Housing Washington were not in a specific community, but across the state. And yeah, I would say something that is really drawing people's attention is that precarious housing piece, and recognize, there's been a strong voice around. It's not that we're not getting people out of moments of homelessness, but people are falling into it if just as quick, if not quicker, as we're getting others out. And so what does it look like to use a sink metaphor, which I'm not sure is the best metaphor, but kind of put a little bit of a stoppage in the drain so that stops happening as quickly. and recognizing that that could also lead to smaller term investments in the long run. So I would say that's also a big thing. I would also add that Commerce is still engaging with this report on a pretty in-depth basis as they've now contracted with other people. They keep pointing the people they're contracting with to our report, and even setting up conversations with us around it. So yeah, it's been taken up in ways that honestly a lot of our reports are not given the opportunity to, because like it was great that the legislature included funding for us to be able to not just produce a report and then say next project, but to continue to do this work after it was finished. So
yeah, and that's really unique to be able to kind of engage with the community to the level that you guys were engaging. I wasn't a part of the development, and I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to speed us through into the next portion of our agenda, and I'm sorry I got to do that, but I wanted to address really quickly, there was an attendee that wanted to ask a question. We have the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom, and so if you want to go ahead and put your question in there, we can either follow up with you after the meeting, or if we can answer it in real time. However, I really wanted to say thank you guys for coming today and giving this report. When I did the follow-up workshops that you guys had, they did have a note taker in every breakout room, and it felt like we were really getting heard and listened to. So thank you guys for that. And I'm happy to hear that it's being used. That's always good, right? Anyway, so thank you guys for being here today. I'm going to move us on to the next segment, which was a community updates portion. I believe that I forgot to mention that the cross-cutting policy work group is usually meeting on Mondays and potentially a Wednesday coming up here soon. But it's usually the fourth Monday of every month. And Elizabeth had asked me to remind people of that. So thank you. Is there any other quick community updates that we might have?
Chelsea, can you tell us when the next coordinated entry meeting is? And we would love for the CoC membership to get involved as well as the board.
Yes, the next coordinated entry committee meeting is on the 27th, and that I believe is from 10 to 12. And the access link is on our website under boards and committees. The CoC board, there is also a coordinated entry committee link there.
Thank you. And then also we have a board retreat that's scheduled next week on Friday, I believe, which is the 14th, aka Valentine's Day. So if you want to have Valentine's Day with us, that would be spectacular. We're going to be posting the information on that soon. It's technically a special meeting, so I'm just letting everyone know. Is there any other community updates really quickly before we move into the adjournment? Dorsal, go ahead.
Just two quick things. Thank you, Ruby. We will send out, in addition to the agenda for the retreat next week, we'll also send out a little bit of instructions for kind of a get to know you session to kind of help ground us as a board together. So be looking for that. And then I also just want to flag the momentum was lost a little bit because of my traveling schedule in January, but Ruby and I are scheduling another round of one-on-ones. We'd love to meet with everyone again and start potentially coordinating some of the work that we'd like to do, getting individual CoC board members in front of elected officials and other members in our community to start doing some of the work that we keep hearing about. So that's all I have, unless Ruby wants to add anything to those.
No, and thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, we're going to send you a few dates that maybe we can link up, because I do enjoy those one-on-ones. Those are really good for us to bond with you guys and learn about the work that we're doing. And I also wanted to bring up something that was mentioned in the chat before we adjourn, that some of these workshops that some of the materials that we were discussing today, we can probably use at some of our planning sessions. So that's exciting. And I see your hand again, Dorsal. Go ahead.
You might have wanted to get there, and Kelsey, thank you for the reminder. We did want to take just a moment to acknowledge Alex, who's still with KCRHA, but was a fundamental, at least ever since I joined the board, was a fundamental support staff member for the board. A lot of our meetings, a lot of the documents we received would not have been possible without Alex. And so we just wanted to shout her out publicly because she's still here and we want to praise her for that.
Yes, thank you, Dorsal. Yes, of course, Alex, you've been a remarkable help, and we miss you around here, but we know that you will be back as you are today, gracing us with your presence. It's good to see your face.
Thank you, everyone. I enjoyed all my time getting to work with you and, getting to know all of you individually. And yeah, I'm still around, I join in, I've missed your guys' faces, so I decided to pop in today. But thank you. It was very sweet of you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know we still have you over at the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jaja. Please go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to say we love you, Alex. We appreciate everything you did. You have always been a rock, and you've always been there to get us through the stumbling blocks. And I just want to say you are like, you may not be here, but you're here in my heart.
You guys are gonna make me cry. Stop it. I love you guys too. And yeah, thank you.
We can all
Appreciate
cry
you.
together if you want,
I know.
if that make you feel better. Yeah, no. And what stumbling blocks, Jaja? There's never been a single mistake that we've ever made. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to Alex?
Alex, I adore you. And I really feel like-minded in terms of like our love for helping people. And so like I just adore you and thank you so much for supporting the board. Please let's stay in touch because you're awesome. And
thank
I like
you.
to surround myself with awesome people.
So are you. I enjoy working with all of you.
Yeah, she was at our convening last week too, so we know we'll see her again. And thank you to everybody in the community that was attended the convening. That was a blast, and I'm looking forward to it being in person next time. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and we'll make sure that that happens. I was excited to hear the YAB has one planned for July. That's another show I get to go to. I'm so excited. I encourage everyone to attend that. So it is now 4 p.m. though. If there's anything else before we log off, I'll give some space for that. Not hearing any. See, I just got a little note here maybe. Oh, yep, we got another congratulations, Alex, from Patricia. So just want to make sure we highlight that. And we look forward to seeing you at our next board meeting, which will be on Wednesday, March 5th from 2 to 4 p.m. And if there's nothing else, the meeting shall be adjourned. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a good week.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Maya.
Okay.